Hi, I'm Professor Merrill. This is my YouTube channel. I've got a project I'm working on today, and it has to do with the garden. So we have a lot of stuff in the garden over here, you can see. And we have a lot of birds that come and eat all of our food. So we're gonna put a bird net over the top of the garden. You can see these white strings. And we're gonna put the net on top of all that, and then put a post in the middle and make like a circus tent type thing for the birds, keep the birds out. Okay, so that's what we're doing today. We have a lot of stuff in our garden, like strawberries, raspberries, blackberries, blueberries, tomatoes, cucumbers, cantaloupe, peaches, watermelon, string beans, peppers, zucchini, and pumpkins, among other things. To grow all that stuff, we need a pretty big garden. And in fact, this one is 67 feet by 91 feet for a total of about 6,100 square feet. This is surrounded by a 7.5-foot fence, which keeps most of the animals out, but not the birds, because they just fly right over the top. Our plan is simple: put a net over the top, pull it tight, trim off the excess, and that will keep the birds out. This seems like a pretty simple plan, but here's a closer look at the net. This is 1-inch nylon mesh, and mesh squares are prone to grabbing onto stuff. I mean, look at this thing grab onto my watch. This stuff grabs onto everything. If you have any buttons or zippers or glasses or camera, anything like that, it just grabs on. It's a real pain. This is no big deal if you don't have very many mesh squares. But the smallest net we could find to cover the whole garden is still really big. So maybe this project deserves some mathematical analysis. I mean, I am a professor after all. The net we found is 100 feet by 100 feet, or 10,000 square feet, or 1,440,000 square inches. That means we have 1,440,000 little nylon mesh squares that we have to handle. The total length of the nylon twine in the net is surprisingly large. The net is a 1,200 by 1,200 grid, meaning that there are 1,201 strands of nylon making the rows and 1,201 strands of nylon making the columns. Each strand is 100 feet long. This makes 240,200 feet of nylon twine, which is just under 45.5 miles. It's amazing that you can buy that much twine for about $200. We only need about 61% of the net, or 878,000 square inches. That's still over 27 miles of nylon twine. So here's the plan. All we need to do is get the net over two sides of the garden. We know that the mesh snags on everything, so we're going to put some tarps down to keep it clear of grass and sticks, unroll the net on the tarps, slide it over the garden fences, and deal with any snags as we go along. And finally, move it over to cover the other two sides of the garden. So we need to get some tarps. Good luck for us, we've got a bunch of those. Time to get out the net. It came in this little box from the internet and is very compact for 45 miles of twine. As we unroll it, it's plain to see that it could be super easy to get tangled or snagged. Looks like we need another tarp and a line of paracord along the edge of the net, and we're ready to put the net over the fence. This is where we run into some trouble. We barely begun and we already have our first big snag. Remember that our plan was to unsnag the snags as they happen? This turns out to be not such a great idea because there are all sorts of loose wire ends and fasteners and other stuff to produce the snags. In addition, as mentioned previously, there are 877,968 little squares, each with a significant chance of getting snagged. Even if that chance was only 1%, we would expect to unsnag the net close to 9,000 times. This is clearly not doable in a reasonable amount of time. There's something we're missing: more tarps. Back to the drawing board. We're now going to put tarps over the two sides where the net is going over to create a protective barrier between the fence and the net. And then we're going to do the same plan as before, but this time without the snags.
Want you like I want the sky to stay ablaze all night. On evenings when the sun descends, memories cast in rosy light. I romanticize gazes you long forgot. Take me back to those years ago, and I promise you would not. Your 5 states away, and I wish that I could say I try to block you out, your memory's still around, and all the people now wouldn't matter in a crowd. With how I see face and the features I replace, dimensions interlace, I see timelines we misplace. It hits me at the oddest times how you look sitting next to me. The mountain air would suit you well, I think that you'd agree. Watching the horizon like we did back in our past. Older, wiser, there's not a sunrise that you let the moment pass. But you're 5 states away, and I can't keep dreams at bay. I try to block you out, your memory's still around, and all the people now wouldn't matter in a crowd. With how I see face and the features I replace, dimensions interlaced, I see timelines we misplace. Long flights back to Philly, filled with wonder, will he? My sister's
Bed sheets seem to work just as well as tarps.
months of listless dreaming, fragmentary scheming, cuts off sleep's advances. I don't take chances, don't breaks at its leisure, drive carefully measured. Our minds all unmuddled, time never solved your puzzle, and I can't see clearly. We only meet up yearly. These heart palpitations, recycled expectations. All this.
We have some help from the kids, some of the kids and the dog, securing the first side of the fence.
You walked me back to my car, there was no summit climb. Built this mountain in my mind like I do every time. The comfortable.
Look at how the net slides over the tarp, just like greased lightning.
Kiss me on that mountaintop, we'd never feel the need to let. But that was 5 years ago, and it's time for me to let go.
Now it's time to take off all of the tarps. We ended up needing almost 230 feet of material to cover the garden fences. That's a lot of tarps, depending on the tarps. There would be even more bed sheets, depending on the bed sheets. We just used what we had on hand. Why do we have so many tarps, you might be wondering? Well, stay tuned to the Professor Merrill YouTube channel, and you'll probably find out. bird net project is just about done. And I'm gonna go put up the center pole. That will about wrap it up. Oh yeah, this looks really nice. It's gonna keep those birds out of the garden. Keep them from eating all our food. Now it's time to clean up, and as I mentioned earlier, this net grabs onto everything. And as I was rolling up the leftovers, I found a pair of glasses that my wife had been looking for a couple of days.